In the world of the bold and the beautiful, danger rarely announces itself with violence at first contact. Instead, it arrives quietly, cloaked in vulnerability, wrapped in the language of pain and shared history, only to tighten its grip when escape is no longer possible. That is precisely how this devastating chain of events begins, when Sheila Carter appears unannounced at the home of Brooke Logan, not as the unhinged threat everyone expects, but as something far more unsettling, a woman on the edge, desperate, wounded, and frighteningly composed. Her presence alone disrupts the fragile emotional balance Brooke has worked so hard to maintain, but it is not just fear that fills the room. It is confusion, curiosity, and something Brooke will later come to regret: hesitation. Sheila does not storm in with threats or accusations. Instead, she begins with truth, her truth, laying bare the betrayal she feels at the hands of Deacon Sharp and Taylor Hayes. She speaks of heartbreak, of humiliation, of the unbearable realization that the life she thought she had rebuilt has once again been taken from her. But beneath this confession lies something far more calculated. Sheila understands Brooke better than Brooke realizes. She knows the history, the wounds that never fully healed, the complicated, unresolved pain tied to Ridge Forster and Taylor. And so she begins to weave her words carefully, not as a plea for sympathy, but as a strategic alignment of grievances. What Sheila proposes is not simply revenge, it is alliance. An alliance built not on trust, but on shared resentment. She frames it as an opportunity, a way for Brooke to regain control, to protect herself from yet another emotional loss, to ensure that Taylor does not once again disrupt her life. It is a dangerous proposition, one that Brooke instinctively knows she should reject. And yet, the emotional weight of Sheila's words begins to press against her defenses. The past is not as distant as Brooke would like to believe, and the idea that Taylor could once again become a destabilizing force stirs something unresolved within her. It is not agreement that leads Brooke to hesitate. It is doubt. And in that moment of doubt, Sheila finds her opening. Brooke's decision to cooperate, however reluctantly, marks the beginning of a descent she does not fully comprehend. She tells herself it is temporary, that she is simply gathering information, that she is maintaining control. But the truth is far more unsettling. By agreeing to Sheila's terms, even in part, Brooke has already stepped into a web she cannot see clearly, one that has been carefully constructed to entangle her at every level. Sheila does not demand loyalty. She only requires participation. And that participation, however small it may seem at first, becomes the thread that binds Brooke to her. As Brooke begins to follow through on the agreement, her internal conflict intensifies. Watching Taylor in secret, observing her movements, her interactions, her moments of vulnerability, Brooke feels the weight of her actions in ways she did not anticipate. This is not who she wants to be. And yet, each step she takes deeper into Sheila's plan is justified by a lingering fear that perhaps Sheila is right, that perhaps vigilance is necessary, that perhaps this is the only way to protect herself. The tension between her moral compass and her emotional insecurities creates a psychological strain that grows heavier with each passing moment. It is within this fragile state that the turning point arrives, a moment so subtle yet so devastating that it reshapes everything Brooke thought she understood about the situation. By chance, or perhaps by fate, Brooke overhears a conversation that was never meant for her ears. Sheila's voice, stripped of its earlier vulnerability, reveals a truth that is both chilling and undeniable. The alliance was never about mutual protection. It was never about shared pain. It was a manipulation from the very beginning, a carefully orchestrated plan designed to draw Brooke in, to position her as both accomplice and eventual victim. What Brooke hears is not just a plan for revenge. It is something far darker. Sheila is not simply targeting Taylor. Her intentions extend further, encompassing Deacon and even Brooke herself. The realization hits with crushing clarity. She has not been a partner in this scheme, but a pawn. Every word Sheila spoke, every emotion she displayed, was part of a calculated effort to control the narrative, to ensure that when the time came, Brooke would be too entangled to escape. The shock of this discovery is immediate and overwhelming. Brooke's first instinct is to pull away, to sever all ties, to reclaim the autonomy she has unknowingly surrendered. But this is where Sheila's true mastery of manipulation reveals itself. She anticipated this moment. She prepared for it. And when Brooke attempts to withdraw, she finds herself facing not just resistance, but something far more insidious: leverage. Sheila does not need to raise her voice or make dramatic threats. Her power lies in what she knows, in the vulnerabilities she has identified, in the connections she is willing to exploit. She makes it clear, in no uncertain terms, that Brooke's involvement cannot simply be undone. There are consequences now, consequences that extend beyond Brooke herself to those she loves. The implication is unmistakable. Compliance is no longer a choice, but a necessity. For Brooke, the realization is devastating. The illusion of control shatters completely, replaced by a suffocating sense of entrapment. Every path forward seems blocked, every option tainted by risk. To continue cooperating is to participate in something she now knows is deeply wrong. To refuse is to endanger not only herself, but the people she cares about most. It is a dilemma with no clear resolution, one that forces Brooke into a state of constant fear and uncertainty. As the episode moves toward its conclusion, the emotional weight of Brooke's situation becomes almost unbearable. She is no longer simply a bystander or even a reluctant participant. She is a captive, bound not by physical restraints, but by psychological manipulation and the threat of consequences she cannot fully predict. Sheila's web has closed around her, each thread tightening with calculated precision, leaving Brooke with the terrifying realization that she has been outmaneuvered at every turn. And at the center of it all stands Sheila, no longer the desperate, grieving woman who first appeared at Brooke's door, but something far more composed, far more dangerous. Her pain has not disappeared. It has transformed, sharpened into a purpose that drives her forward with chilling clarity. She is no longer reacting to betrayal. She is orchestrating the next phase of it. The final image of this unfolding drama is not one of action, but of stillness, a stillness filled with tension, with fear, with the quiet understanding that everything has changed. Brooke, once a woman defined by her strength and resilience, now finds herself trapped in a situation where those very qualities may not be enough to save her. The walls are closing in, the options are disappearing, and the path ahead is obscured by uncertainty. What makes this moment so powerful is not just the danger it represents, but the psychological depth it reveals. This is not a story about a single act of betrayal or revenge. It is a story about control, about how it is gained, how it is lost, and how it can be used to reshape reality itself. It is about the fragile line between victim and participant, and how easily that line can be crossed without ever being fully understood. As the screen fades, one question lingers, heavy and unresolved. How does someone escape a trap they did not even realize they were walking into? And for Brooke, the answer may come too late, as she stands at the center of Sheila's carefully constructed web, with no clear way out and no certainty about what will happen next. The silence that follows is not empty. It is suffocating, heavy with the unspoken realization that Brooke is no longer in control of her own choices. In the hours after Sheila leaves, the house feels different, as though every familiar corner has been quietly claimed by something unseen, something waiting. Brooke moves through the space with a growing sense of unease, replaying every word, every glance, every subtle shift in Sheila's tone. What terrifies her most is not just what Sheila threatened, but how easily she herself had been drawn in, how quickly her judgment had been clouded by old wounds she thought she had long since mastered. That awareness settles into her like a slow-burning ache, because it forces her to confront a truth she does not want to accept. Part of her had wanted to believe Sheila, not because she trusted her, but because the resentment Sheila exploited had never truly disappeared. As night falls, Brooke's instinct is to act, to warn someone, to break the chain before it tightens any further. But every possible move feels dangerous. Reaching out to Ridge Forrester could expose her involvement. Confiding in Taylor Hayes could provoke exactly the kind of confrontation Sheila is anticipating. Even contacting Deacon Sharp carries risk, because Sheila has already demonstrated that she is always one step ahead, always watching, always listening. Brooke realizes, with growing horror, that the very network of relationships she once relied on for support has now become a web of vulnerabilities Sheila can exploit at will. Meanwhile, Sheila does not rush. That is what makes her most dangerous in this moment. She does not act out of impulse. She allows time to do its work, to let fear deepen, to let Brooke's isolation grow. In Sheila's mind, the plan is already unfolding exactly as intended. She has not only inserted herself into Brooke's life, she has reshaped it, forcing Brooke to question every decision, every instinct. And in that psychological disorientation lies Sheila's true power. She understands that control is not maintained through constant presence, but through the anticipation of presence, through the knowledge that she could appear at any moment, that she could act without warning. At the same time, another thread of tension begins to tighten elsewhere, unnoticed by both Brooke and Sheila. Taylor Hayes senses something shifting, though she cannot yet define it. Her moments with Deacon, which should feel like the beginning of something new and hopeful, are instead tinged with a faint but persistent unease. There are small details that do not quite align, a shadow that lingers too long, a sense of being watched that she cannot shake, a subtle disruption in the rhythm of her otherwise controlled world. She tells herself it is just the emotional residue of recent events, but the feeling refuses to fade. Deacon, in contrast, leans into the illusion of a fresh start. For him, the break from Sheila represents a turning point, a chance to finally build something stable with Taylor without the constant interference of the past. Yet even as he embraces this new beginning, there are cracks beneath the surface. His guilt over how things ended with Sheila has not disappeared. It has simply been pushed aside, buried under the urgency of moving forward. That unresolved guilt creates a blind spot, a vulnerability that leaves him less aware of the dangers still surrounding them. Back at Brooke's house, the pressure becomes unbearable. The longer she remains silent, the more complicit she feels, and the more the weight of Sheila's manipulation presses down on her. Finally, driven by a mixture of fear and desperation, Brooke makes a decision that feels both necessary and reckless. She begins to gather evidence. If Sheila is orchestrating something larger, if there is a plan unfolding beyond what she has already revealed, then Brooke needs proof. Not just for herself, but as a way out, a way to reclaim some measure of control. This shift in Brooke's approach marks a subtle but crucial turning point. She is no longer simply reacting. She is beginning to resist. But resistance comes with its own risks. The more she investigates, the more she exposes herself to Sheila's awareness. And Sheila, ever perceptive, begins to notice the change. There is a moment, a brief, almost imperceptible hesitation in Brooke's responses, a slight shift in her demeanor, that signals something has changed. For Sheila, this is not a threat, but an opportunity. It confirms that Brooke is reaching her breaking point, that the psychological pressure is working exactly as intended. What Sheila does next is not immediate retaliation, but escalation. She tightens her grip, not through direct confrontation, but through subtle reminders of her power. A message left where it should not be. A piece of information revealed that Brooke never explicitly shared. A suggestion, never a threat, always a suggestion, that someone close to Brooke could be affected if things begin to unravel. These actions are carefully calibrated, designed to reinforce the reality that Brooke cannot outmaneuver her, that any attempt to do so will only deepen her entanglement. As these tensions build, the narrative begins to converge. Brooke's quiet investigation, Sheila's calculated manipulation, and the growing unease surrounding Deacon and Taylor all begin to intersect, creating a sense that something is approaching, something inevitable. The feeling is not of immediate danger, but of impending collapse, as though all the carefully constructed facades are beginning to crack at once. The true turning point comes when Brooke uncovers something she was not meant to find, a detail that reframes everything. It is not just that Sheila has a plan. It is that the plan involves more players than Brooke initially realized. There are connections, threads that extend beyond the immediate circle, suggesting that Sheila's actions are part of something larger, something more intricate than simple revenge. This discovery both terrifies and galvanizes Brooke, because it means that stopping Sheila is not just about protecting herself. It is about preventing a chain reaction that could affect everyone involved. But with that realization comes an even more devastating truth: she cannot do it alone. The very people she needs to trust are the ones Sheila has positioned as liabilities. Every move Brooke considers is shadowed by the possibility of exposure, of retaliation, of making things worse instead of better. And yet, doing nothing is no longer an option. As the story pushes forward, Brooke finds herself standing at the edge of a decision that will define everything that follows. She can remain within the web, playing her role, hoping to minimize the damage. Or she can risk everything: her reputation, her relationships, her safety, to break free and expose Sheila's plan. Neither path offers certainty, only different forms of danger. In the final moments of this unfolding chapter, the emotional tension reaches a near-breaking point. Brooke, alone but no longer passive, begins to take her first real step toward defiance. It is small, almost imperceptible, but it marks the beginning of a shift that Sheila may not have fully anticipated. Because while Sheila has built a web designed to trap her, she may have underestimated one crucial factor: Brooke's ability to endure, to adapt, and ultimately, to fight back when there is truly nothing left to lose. And somewhere, just beyond the edges of this carefully constructed game, the consequences are already beginning to take shape, waiting for the